First contacts the Deep Space Monitoring Station. Alpha 7 detected the signal at 3:47 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time. Dr. Sarah Chen had been monitoring the night shift for 12 years, but she had never seen anything like this. The signal wasn't random, cosmic noise or a distant pulsar. It was structured, deliberate, and coming from a region of space that should have been empty. Sarah adjusted her glasses and leaned closer to the screen. The pattern repeated every 17 seconds, a complex mathematical sequence that made her heart race. She reached for the red phone that connected directly to the International Space Monitoring Council. Within minutes, every major observatory on Earth had turned their instruments toward the source of the signal. 3 hours later, the signal changed. It became stronger, clearer, and then it spoke. The message came through in perfect English, then repeated in Mandarin, Spanish, Hindi, and every major language on Earth. The voice was deep and resonant, neither male nor female, but something altogether different. People of Earth, we are the Krillian Dominion. We have observed your world for 100 of your years. You have reached the threshold of interstellar awareness. According to galactic law established 10,000 years ago, you must now be tested. If you pass, you will be welcomed into the community of civilized worlds. If you fail, your planet will be quarantined for another 1,000 years. President Marcus Washington sat in the Situation Room of the White House, surrounded by military advisors, scientists, and diplomats. Similar meetings were happening in Beijing, Moscow, London, and every major capital. The screens around the room showed data from satellites and ground stations. The source of the transmission was now visible through telescopes. A massive ship, easily the size of Manhattan, hung motionless just beyond the orbit of Neptune. General Patricia Hayes, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, was the first to speak after the message ended. Mr. President, we need to consider this a potential threat. That ship appeared out of nowhere. If they can hide something that large, what else are they capable of? Dr. Robert Kim, the President's science advisor, shook his head. General, if they wanted to harm us, they could have done it already. The technology required to move a ship that size and hide it from our sensors is centuries beyond anything we have. I think we need to listen to what they're saying. The President rubbed his temples. He had been in office for only 6 months, and now he faced the most significant moment in human history. What kind of test are they talking about? Military, technological, intelligence. Before anyone could answer, the screens flickered. The alien voice returned, but this time it came with an image. The being on the screen was tall, perhaps 8 feet, with pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer. Its eyes were large and dark, and when it spoke, its mouth revealed no teeth, just a smooth interior that glowed faintly. I am Commander Zix of the Krillian Dominion exploration vessel Eternal Wisdom. Your leaders are no doubt discussing how to respond to our presence. Let me ease your concerns. The test we propose is not one of military might or technological prowess. The galaxy has seen enough war. What we seek to measure is something far more important. The commander paused, and its large eyes seemed to look directly at each person watching, no matter where they were on Earth. We wish to test your capacity for unity, creativity, and what you call humanity. You have 7 of your days to select 5 representatives. These 5 will speak for your entire species. Choose wisely, for the fate of your world rests in their hands. The transmission ended, leaving billions of people around the world in stunned silence. Social media exploded with theories, fears, and debates. Some called for Earth's greatest scientists to be chosen. Others argued for military leaders or diplomats. Religious leaders called for prayer, while skeptics claimed it was all an elaborate hoax. In a small apartment in Mumbai, India, 13-year-old Priya Sharma watched the news with her grandfather. She had always been fascinated by space and spent her nights looking at the stars through a telescope her grandfather had given her for her birthday. "Grandfather," she said quietly, "what if they don't want our smartest or strongest? What if they want to see who we really are?" Her grandfather, a retired philosophy professor, smiled at his granddaughter's wisdom. "Then perhaps, little one, we should not send those who think they represent the best of us, but those who actually do." Unknown to Priya, similar conversations were happening around the world. In São Paulo, Brazil, a young doctor named Carlos Mendoza was working in a free clinic when he heard the news. He had given up a lucrative career to help the poor, and now he wondered if humanity would choose representatives based on power and prestige or something more meaningful. In Nairobi, Kenya, an engineer named Amara Okonkwo was showing a group of children how to build water purification systems from recycled materials. She had invented dozens of simple technologies that had improved life for millions in developing nations, but she had never sought fame or fortune for her work. In Oslo, Norway, retired diplomat Erik Lindquist sat in his study, remembering his decades of work bringing peace to conflict zones. He had never won a Nobel Prize, though he had been nominated several times. His successes had always been quiet ones, measured in lives saved rather than headlines made. And in New York City, a janitor named Miguel Rodriguez was cleaning the floors of the United Nations building when he heard the announcement. Miguel had worked there for 20 years, speaking 7 languages fluently and often helping lost diplomats find their way. He had once been a professor of linguistics in his native Guatemala, but life had taken him on a different path. As the days passed, the selection process became increasingly contentious. Every nation wanted their representative chosen. The United Nations held emergency sessions that devolved into shouting matches. Military forces were put on high alert as conspiracy. Theories spread about secret communications with the aliens. On the 4th day, something unexpected happened. A young girl's video went viral across all platforms. Priya Sharma had recorded herself speaking directly to the camera, her telescope visible in the background. "We're doing this wrong," she said simply. "The aliens said they want to test our humanity, but look at us. We're fighting, arguing, trying to grab power. Is this really who we want to show them we are?" Her words spread like wildfire. Within hours, millions of people were sharing the video with a simple message: let them choose themselves. The movement grew organically, without leaders or organization. People began nominating individuals, not for their power or fame, but for their humanity. The names that emerged were not the ones anyone expected. Not presidents or generals, not billionaires or celebrities. Instead, they were teachers, doctors, engineers, peacekeepers, and yes, even janitors. People who had spent their lives helping others without seeking recognition. By the 6th day, 5 names had emerged through global consensus. Dr. Carlos Mendoza, the doctor from Brazil; Amara Okonkwo, the engineer from Kenya; Erik Lindquist, the diplomat from Norway; Miguel Rodriguez, the janitor from Guatemala; and surprisingly, Priya Sharma, the 13-year-old girl from India whose simple words had changed everything. Governments protested, military leaders warned of disaster, but the people had spoken. These 5 would represent humanity, not because they were chosen by those in power, but because they were chosen by the human family itself. Asterisk on the seventh day. A smaller craft descended from the Krillian ship and landed in international waters. The 5 representatives were brought to the landing site, where they stood together on the deck of a ship, watching as a ramp extended from the alien craft. Commander Zix emerged, towering over the humans, but moving with surprising grace. The alien's expression was unreadable, but there was something in its large eyes that might have been approval. "You have surprised us," Zix said, its voice carrying across the water. "In 10,000 years of testing species, none have chosen as you have. You did not send your warriors or your rulers. You sent those who serve." Miguel stepped forward, his janitor's uniform clean and pressed. "With respect, Commander, we sent those who represent what we hope humanity can be, not what it sometimes is." The commander's head tilted, a gesture that seemed almost curious. "The test has already begun, Miguel Rodriguez, and you have passed the first part." The test of humanity. The interior of the Krillian ship was nothing like what Earth's science fiction had imagined. Instead of cold metal corridors and blinking lights, the 5 representatives found themselves in what looked like a vast garden. Trees they didn't recognize reached toward a ceiling that showed a perfect simulation of Earth's sky. The air smelled of flowers and rain, though no rain was falling. Commander Zix led them along a path that seemed to be made of compressed starlight, shimmering beneath their feet. Other Krillians watched from a respectful distance, their expressions unreadable but their interest obvious. The humans noticed that the aliens came in various shades of blue and purple, some tall like Zix, others shorter, and a few that seemed to float rather than walk. "Your selection process was the first test," Zix explained as they walked. "Most species send their most powerful, their most intelligent, or their most aggressive. You sent those who serve others. This speaks well of your potential." Priya, despite being the youngest, showed no fear. She walked beside the towering alien with the same curiosity she brought to her telescope each night. "Commander Zix, you said you've been watching us for 100 years. Why test us now?" The commander's large eyes focused on the young girl. "Because you have reached a crossroads, young one. In the next 50 of your years, you will either destroy yourselves or take your place among the stars. The test determines which path you will take." They entered a vast chamber where dozens of alien species had gathered. Some looked vaguely humanoid, others were so foreign that the human mind struggled to process their forms. A being that appeared to be made entirely of crystalline structures spoke in harmonious tones that Zix translated. "These are the representatives of the Galactic Council. Each species here has passed the test and earned their place. Now, you must prove that humanity deserves to join them." Eric, the diplomat, studied the assembled beings with professional interest. "What must we do?" A new figure stepped forward, a creature that resembled a giant mantis, but moved with fluid grace. Its voice was like wind through leaves. "The test is simple in concept, complex in execution. You must solve the unity problem." The center of the chamber transformed, becoming a 3-dimensional holographic display. It showed a planet torn by conflict, its inhabitants dying from war, disease, and environmental collapse. The image was painful to watch, and Carlos, the doctor, instinctively stepped forward as if he could somehow help. "This is Zarian Prime," the mantis being explained. "A real world, dying in real time. 5 species live there, each blaming the others for their problems. They have 7 days before their conflicts trigger an environmental cascade that will end all life on their planet. Many species have tried to solve this problem in simulation. None have succeeded. If you can find a solution, you pass. If not, the being didn't need to finish. The stakes were clear. Amara, the engineer, was already studying the holographic display, her mind working through possibilities. We need data, environmental readings, resource distribution, the history of their conflicts. Information flooded the display, more than any human could process. The 5 Earth representatives stood in a circle around the projection, each seeing the problem from their unique perspective. Miguel noticed something others might have missed. Despite speaking different languages, the 5 species of Zorathian Prime all used similar gestures when expressing fear or love. They're more alike than different, he murmured in Spanish, then repeated it in English for the others. Eric nodded, his diplomatic mind already working. Every conflict has roots in misunderstanding. But look at this. They're all suffering from the same environmental crisis. They need each other to survive. Carlos pointed to medical data streaming past. There's a plague affecting all 5 species. But each species has partial immunity to different strains. If we could synthesize their immunities. The infrastructure is the key, Amara interrupted, her engineering instincts taking over. Look, each species controls different resources. One has water, another has the technology to purify it. One has food production, another has distribution networks. They've created artificial scarcity through conflict. Priya had been quiet, absorbing everything. Then she spoke with the clarity that had made her video go viral. They're like children fighting over toys while their house burns down. We need to show them the fire. The Galactic Council watched in silence as the humans worked. Other species had approached this problem with force, trying to impose peace. Others had tried complex negotiations that took too long. Some had attempted technological solutions that ignored the cultural elements. But the humans did something different. They combined their approaches into something unprecedented. Miguel suggested using universal gestures and symbols to create a common visual language that all 5 species could understand immediately. Eric developed a framework for negotiation that didn't require the species to trust each other, only to recognize their mutual dependence. Carlos created a medical protocol that would require each species to contribute their immunity to save all of them. Amara designed an infrastructure plan that made cooperation not just beneficial but necessary for survival, and Priya, the youngest among them, provided the crucial element. We need to speak to their children, she said, not their leaders. The children haven't learned to hate yet. The plan was bold, unorthodox, and according to the Galactic Council's computers, had only a 12% chance of success. But the humans weren't finished. We need to go there, Miguel said suddenly. Not send a message or a plan. We need to go ourselves. Commander Zix's expression changed for the first time, showing what might have been surprise. You would risk your lives for a species you've never met, Carlos answered without hesitation. We're doctors, engineers, peacekeepers, and teachers. It's what we do. The Galactic Council murmured among themselves. This was unprecedented. The test was meant to be theoretical, a simulation. But these humans were proposing to make it real. The crystalline being spoke again, its harmonious voice filling the chamber. If you go and fail, you fail not just the test, but risk your lives. Earth would lose its representatives. Eric smiled, the expression of a man who had walked into war zones armed only with words. With respect, If we're not willing to risk ourselves for peace, then we don't deserve to represent humanity. The council agreed, though some members clearly thought the humans were foolish. A small ship was prepared, and within hours, the 5 representatives were traveling through space toward a dying world. Zorathian Prime was worse than the holographic display had shown. The sky was choked with ash from burning cities. The oceans were poisoned, the land scarred by weapons, neither nuclear nor conventional, but somehow worse. The 5 species, the scaled Zorathi, the crystalline builders, the aquatic Flausingers, the aerial skydancers, and the underground delvers had segregated themselves into fortified zones, each slowly dying in isolation. The humans landed not in a capital or military base, but in a neutral zone where refugee children from all 5 species had gathered, abandoned by the conflicts of their elders. It was Priya who stepped out first, carrying something that made the council members who were watching gasp in recognition. She carried toys, simple toys from Earthaball, a jump rope, building blocks, paper, and crayons. Within minutes, she had children from all 5 species playing together, their laughter a foreign sound on this dying world. While Priya worked with the children, the others implemented their plan. Miguel used his linguistic skills to create a visual pigeon language on massive screens, showing all 5 species the real enemy, the environmental collapse that would kill them all in days. Carlos set up medical stations where each species had to contribute their immunity to create a universal cure. Amara began emergency infrastructure repairs that required materials and expertise from all 5 species. Eric negotiated not peace, but survival pacts, small agreements that built on each other, but the masterstroke came from the children. Priya had them draw pictures of what they wanted their world to look like. These drawings were broadcast across the planet, and for the first time in generations, adults saw their world through their children's eyes. The drawings showed not 5 separate species, but children, playing together under a clear sky. The transformation wasn't immediate or complete. There were setbacks, moments of violence, and old hatreds that died hard. But piece by piece, survival overwrote ideology. The medical stations became neutral grounds. The infrastructure projects created mixed work teams. The children's voices grew louder, asking why their parents were fighting when they could be friends. On the 6th day, something remarkable happened. The leaders of all 5 species came to the neutral zone, drawn by reports of the mysterious aliens who were somehow bringing peace. They found not conquerors or manipulators, but servants. They saw Carlos treating wounded from all sides without distinction, Amara teaching engineers from different species to work together, Eric mediating disputes with patience and wisdom, Miguel helping everyone communicate, and Priya organizing children's peace marches that had spread across the planet. The leader of the Zorathi, scarred by decades of war, approached Eric. "Why do you do this? What do you gain?" Eric's answer was simple. "We're human, it's what we do." By the 7th day, Zorathian Prime was not healed, but it was healing. The 5 species had formed an emergency coalition government focused on survival. The environmental cascade had been halted, though barely. The plague was contained with the universal cure. Most importantly, the children were playing together, and their parents were beginning to remember what peace looked like. The humans returned to the Krillian ship, exhausted but alive. The Galactic Council had assembled in full. Hundreds of species watching as Commander Zix stood before the 5 representatives. "In 10,000 years," Zix began, "no species has approached the test as you have. You were asked to solve a problem, and you chose to heal the world. You were given a simulation, and you made it real. You risked everything for beings you had never met. The crystalline being chimed in. The test was never about saving Zorathian Prime, though you did that. It was about showing us who you are. And you have shown us something we have not seen before. The mantis being stepped forward. You showed us that humanity's greatest strength is not your technology or your military might. It is your capacity to see yourself in others, to serve without expectation of reward, to risk everything for strangers. Commander Zix raised all four of its arms. The Galactic Council unanimously welcomes Earth to the community of worlds. But more than that, we ask you to teach us. For in trying to test your humanity, you have shown us what we have lost in our long years among the stars. The chamber erupted in celebration, sounds and colors from 100 worlds expressing joy. But the 5 humans stood quietly, holding hands, thinking not of their triumph, but of the children on Zorathian Prime who would grow up in peace. Later, as they prepared to return to Earth with technologies and knowledge that would transform their world, Priya asked Commander Zix a question that had been bothering her. Commander, you said you've been watching us for 100 years. You must have seen our wars, our cruelties, our failures. Why did you still test us? Zix's large eyes seemed to smile, though its face remained unchanged. Because in all those years, we also saw something else. We saw humans risk their lives to save strangers. We saw you feed the hungry, heal the sick, and comfort the grieving. We saw you create art and music and stories, not for profit, but for joy. We saw you love fiercely, forgive repeatedly, and hope endlessly. The commander paused, looking at the blue marble of Earth growing larger in the view screen. We tested you not despite your flaws, but because of how you overcome them. The galaxy needs humanity, not because you are perfect, but because you never stopped trying to be better. As the 5 representatives returned to Earth, they carried with them more than just alien technology or galactic membership. They carried proof of what humanity could achieve when it chose compassion over conflict, service over supremacy, and unity over division. The world they returned to would never be the same, not because of the alien contact, but because humanity had been reminded of its own better nature. The girl from India, the doctor from Brazil, the engineer from Kenya, the diplomat from Norway, and the janitor from Guatemala had shown the galaxy what it meant to be human. And in response, the galaxy had not commanded Earth to step back, but had instead stepped aside to welcome humanity home to the stars where it belonged.